Welcome, one and all, to the mystical world of Filbar. Adventures abound throughout this realm, and we appreciate the opportunity to regale you with some stories from these trails. These accounts are all based on actual RPG experiences that occurred within Adventures in Filbar. Some of these tales may be for mature audiences, while others may be for very immature audiences. We now present the sage Mikas Tumo from Tamel, also known as the Bard of Filbar.
Welcome to session Fartook-112. Our last episode featured a fight with the bugbears that were lying in wait for some unwary travelers. As the group reached the edge of the woods, they observed a line of merchants headed towards Nako Keep. The careful eye of Cabe Silvertongue spotted the trap, and quick action by the rest of the group sent most of the bugbears scurrying away and slaying 3 of them. The grateful merchants offered a reward, but the party had looted the bugbear corpses and obtained more than enough for the effort expended. The merchants quickened their pace in order to get out of Debut Woods before nightfall, and the party headed to the mountain en route to the city of Hadonfield. We rejoined the group as they guided their mounts between large stones that had fallen from the high peaks. "Well, this is a perfect place for an ambush," muttered Fargus Stoutheart. The comment was overheard by the rest of the group that were walking in a straight line through the crushed stones littering the path. Each delver kept a close eye on the high peaks, with Sister Elaine covering their passage in the rear. A small skittering of stones cascaded down the chasm wall on the left, causing everyone to reach for their weapons, but nothing could be seen. Lady Irena called for the group to halt and dismounted. Moving into a rocky area, she apparently spied something. The others, not seeing any adversaries, were curious and called out to her. She reached into the rocky debris and pulled forth a small bronze ring. A yellow triangular stone adorned the piece, and the elven mage wrinkled her nose. Bulger inquired if the item was valuable, as if the female held it aloft. Lady Irena passed her hand over the item and murmured some words, and the ring began to glow brightly. The rest of the party watched her examine the item, but the attention was diverted when a very large raven swooped in and plucked it out of her hand. Caught off guard, the elf staggered back and landed on her butt with a large thud. Fargus quickly grabbed his magical crossbow and began to line up a shot when the mage stopped him. "No!" she shouted. It's fine. Leave the bird alone. It can have the ring." Bulger argued that the item was obviously magical and they should shoot the creature out of the sky, but a sharp glance from Irena quieted him quickly. She mounted her horse again, and the group moved through the rocky pass without further incident and came out to the water line of the Katorian coastline. Across the water, a large lighthouse with a flame flickering at the top could easily be seen, as well as several seagoing vessels and a plethora of buildings. "Hadonfield!" proclaimed Bulger as the others surveyed the panoramic view. Smaller than Phoenix, the city appeared to be newer, with a great deal of construction going on. Buildings were present in and outside of the city walls. Sitting on the coastline, the city had a good-sized harbor, but only one warship was present. Blocks of birds hovered over the walls and the small fishing craft that were coming in from the morning catch. Farming fields with small houses dotted the area, and the road was well trodden. Guessing that there were still a few miles outside the growing metropolis, the party pushed forward as the sun had already passed the high point of the day. Along the road, the hardy group of adventurers passed children helping in the fields, farmers guiding plow animals, and even a few protective dogs were present. Foot traffic was picking up as the farmers and woodsmen were taking supplies into the city, but seemed to be less than friendly. Reaching the fortified timber gates of the city, the party noticed several slovenly guards present that didn't even give the group a passing notice. "Gee, I feel safer already," smirked Cabe Silvertongue at the lack of enthusiasm by the guards. Sister Elaine pointed out that the group was probably better off being taken for granted, pointing out that at least they weren't recognized as having a price on their heads. The remark struck home, and the group nodded in agreement. The cleric looked over to Bulger once they had made it through the gates and asked, "Where to?" With the others looking at him for guidance, he stumbled on his words. Lady Irena inquired that he had been here before, which caused the gnome to sputter out his response. Well, of course I have. I mean, plenty of times, my dear. It's just that, well, I'm unfamiliar with, but his words began to linger. Unfamiliar with what? Inquired Fargus Stoutheart. The former sailor looked to each other and pointed out that he was not being used to being in charge of something. Since I met you, my fine friends, you have done all the deciding and thinking, and I've been fine with that. I had just forgotten what it was like to be a decision-maker. The others chuckled but waved off the gnome's flustered look, pointing out that they had always considered him an equal, and apologized if they had been overbearing. Apologies were dished out on both sides before Bulger puffed out his chest and told the group to follow him. Each member of the party looked to one another, giving a flourishing bow which only made Bulger turn beet red with embarrassment. Moving slowly through the streets, the group noticed how the townspeople seemed happy and didn't give them a second glance. Colorful flowers sprang from the wooden boxes under windows, and the fresh air from the bay emptied into the streets of the urban stench that they had noticed in Phoenix. Tall masts of ships could be seen above the buildings in town, and it was clear that Bulger knew where he was headed. The dock was busy, but not overly so, and Bulger jumped from his pony, handing the reins to Fargus. Telling the group to wait, he proceeded over to a small group of men near the longest dock. Sister Elaine looked over to Lady Irena and inquired if she could hear what was going on. The man in the red surcoats with the brass buttons is apparently the boss in charge of ship schedules. Bulger certainly knows the lingo, and the men are not prejudiced against his size or race. Oh my, as the mage turned red. Fargus inquired as to what was wrong, and she attempted to shake off the question, but was pressed by Cabe, who could not hear as far or as well as his full-blooded counterpart could. Flushed with embarrassment, the woman took a moment and pointed out that she did not know who the sailor was or where this Nantucket was, but she was certainly hoping that they were not headed that way. Puzzled, the group spotted a smiling gnome returning. Great guys they are. Bit of bad news, though. We have 2 days before any vessel headed to Phoenix will be in port. I guess we need to find rooms, and I suppose we should sell the horses, said Bulger. Fargus pointed out that he seemed to be in a good mood despite the delay, and the former sailor agreed. I just heard the funniest joke. It was about but Bulger stopped short and pointed out that he could tell them later, as the company may not find it suitable. Lady Irena shook her head and turned her horse around, pointing out that they had already passed the stables.
We close out this episode now and give you our thanks for listening. Please subscribe to this podcast, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter at The Bards Podcast. For everyone in Adventures of Filbar, thanks for listening.